Hey y'all, let's do some bench racing. Basically, that means we're gonna update you what's going on with the bench and maybe tell a story or two, because that's what you do when you bench race, you tell stories. First of all, we've got the painting disaster 58 Chevy back up again, looking fresh and really good. I changed the paint colors, but kept a lot of the layout the same. I had an epiphany when I did the roof to kind of flip-flop the colors, and I was gonna go silver on this deal, but as I was prepping to walk out the door to paint it after I'd done all the painstaking taping, I saw the Tamiya Blue Pearl TS59, or 58, and I was like, wow, that'll look killer. So I just, at the last moment, grabbed the Pearl light blue, and I love it. I think it looks really great. Basically what I've done so far is I did it in 2 steps. I did the roof and the side spears in the first step. And then I did the rocker lines and the rear quarters in the second paint. I just wanted to sort of simplify it and make sure there wasn't a lot of bleed. After I taped it, I used really good tape. I don't know how to have it here, but it's this green stuff called lime wire, I think, live wire. I don't know, it's really good stuff. It's vinyl tape. And I didn't have hardly any bleed under that tape. But what I did is after I laid the tape down, I put a coat of clear on it to seal the tape, and that pretty much did the trick. So not only am I having no like paint interactions, because I'm sticking with the same kinds of paints, but I had very little bleed. Now I did have a few issues here and there, so I scuffed the whole thing with like 3000, and I decanted a little of the purple to kind of daub in some areas. You can see some shiny spots on there. What I'm gonna do is let that dry, and then I'm gonna sand those spots with 3000, sand them down a little bit. Then I'm gonna do all the bare metal foil around the windows and the side trim. And after the bare metal foil's done, and after I touch up the light blue a little bit in just some really small places, then I'm gonna bury it in clear coat. Lots of clear, lots of coats. I'm hoping that this all becomes flat, because there's quite you can feel some pretty big ridges where I taped off those lines, and I want that all to be flat. Then we'll color sand, micro sand, micro polish, and I think it'll turn out pretty good. But anyway, I'm loving the purple. These are all Tamiya colors: purple, TS24 purple, and TS58 light pearl light blue. Another thing is I've changed the wheels. Look at those wires and triple Piner whites. So cool. I didn't even know I was gonna get those things. I ordered that 65 Riviera Barris kit off of eBay because I've always wanted one. And I opened it up and I stopped in my tracks and thought, whoa, those are a good looking set of wires. Those wires almost look like Buick Skylark wires, which is one of my favorite wheels ever. I mean, it came in a Riviera, so maybe they were trying to copy the Skylark wires. And then the triple whites, whoa, I was blown away. I was like, those don't look killer on my 58. I stopped what I was doing immediately, fitted them up to this 58, which was no easy task. First of all, these wheels, this is an old kit that's reissued by Round 2. These wheels were attached to the chrome tree in a way that it was almost impossible to get them off the chrome tree without damaging the rim. So what I did is, I don't know if y'all do this, but I don't have my drill, but I have a cordless drill, and let's see if I can get one of these wheels out here real quick. Okay, what I do is I chuck them up in the drill, and it is busted off now, but this had a really big boss on the back, and so you chuck those up gently in the drill, and I actually machined these in the drill and fixed all the little mess ups on the rim, and as you can see where it's missing the chrome, I spun it in my drill and then let the file kind of do the work, and so it wasn't even. I also needed to narrow these up a bunch, and these are a 2-piece wheel, as you can see in there. There's the back of the spokes. And so I allowed this to spin, and I was able to get under the back of it with it chucked up in there and grind down with an 80 grit emery board to narrow these up. Because they actually didn't fit these tires well at all, even to go in the Riviera kit. So I narrowed them to go on this 58. So I just think it's looking really good. Of course I'm biased, but because I chose everything But I think the wires and the triple whites are killer. The paint is looking really good. This is a Watson style paint. I copied a Watson 58 Chevy that he painted for Jim Doss, I think is the guy's name. It was green and gold. I did another video on this car. I've done a couple videos, and the first video was how I ruined the paint, and so I stripped it in brake fluid, and this is where we are, and it's looking really fly, so happy with that. Next up, we got the USACK truck. Trying to think of what all I've done since the last time I updated you guys. A lot of just fine tuning the bodywork, really. Getting it all, the fit and finish good, all the little seams filled, making sure everything's good. You know, the prime sand, and repeat again and again and again. I worked on the firewall. I cleaned that all up. That was pretty goobered due to this section. So I filed that all the way up past the hinge holes. I think I'm either gonna fill that with sheet styrene or a piece of clear colored plastic, because you know, baller show cars in the 60s had clear firewalls. Of course they did. Another thing I did was the front fascia of this thing kind of bothered me. I couldn't figure out what was bothering me. And so I kept looking at it, and I realized there was a gap above the grill, like, right here. And there was just a gap there because this is a 125th scale grill, 124th scale grill shell. There was just some issues going on there. So basically I was like, well, I think I'll just add some material to the end of the hood. Before I did that, I decided, well, I'm just gonna put some styrene rod in there and see what happens. So I took a piece of styrene rod, and the styrene rod I have bends really easy and holds its shape. And I kind of glued it in place, and it filled the gap really well. So I'm done. I don't need to do anything else. It makes it look like the grill surround just continues, and it hugs that whole grill really nicely. The little bumper zits are from the 56 T-Bird. I cut them off the bumper, and they're just Elmer's glued on there to see if I like them or not. I'm not sure what to do with them. I don't like that giant snowplow being bare. It needs something. It's just way too big. I still may cut it down, or I might just disguise it with that. I painted up the 312Y block gold, just a single 4-barrel carb right now. I don't know if I'm gonna do anything fancy on it. I'll detail up the motor and stuff. Probably not gonna wire it, but the 312Y block looks really good in there. Just trying to get it set and making sure everything's gonna fit. But that'd be a real normal and expected engine to see in one of these trucks. I went ahead and made a tonneau cover just out of some sheet styrene to fit down inside the bed rails. The other one I had was up on top of the bed rails. It looked really bad. I don't know what else to say. Actually, it was really challenging to make a perfectly square rectangle and then realize the bed was not even close to being square. So a lot of fitting, filing to get that tonneau cover to fit right. So that's all for now on the USACK build. Let's look at the Woody. Now, the last video I did on this Woody was pretty complete. There's really nothing more to say about the Woody except it has some accessories. Yeah, I built the little Stingray bicycle. I got some surfboards from the 59 Caddy Hurst surf wagon kit. Painted it up, decaled it, cleared it, polished it. And so now the Woody has a surfboard and a bicycle, which I think is pretty cool. We also have a stash ad, the 65 Riviera Barris Via Riviera, based on the movie car of the year. Great box art. Round 2 really kills it with the box art. I love these Rivieras. I would like to have a 63 or 4. Those are really expensive on eBay if you find a 63 or 64 Riviera. So I just went with the 65. I might get lucky and find a 64 one day, but there's that beautiful Buick Riviera body, molded in rear end and exhaust. So that's a bummer, but this is a very old kit that has been reissued. I already talked about how I robbed the super sweet wire wheels out of it and the triple whites, but it also has another set of wheels, skinnies on one side and a little bit wider on the other. So there's plenty of tires to go around. There's also the stock kind of turbine hubcaps. And then there's these really cool slots. It wouldn't look terrible on this. There's plenty of stuff to build. Lots of custom options. The Landau roof, you actually have to cut yourself, but it does come with a chrome piece of trim to put on there. And then it's got a couple different options of rolled pans and different things like that. Just a really, really cool kit. Got the Buick nail head. And yeah, just some of the cool things. So this will be a really cool kit to do. I've got some Pegasus Astro Supremes also. Are they in here? Did I put them in here? No. I got some Pegasus Astro Supremes. I think that Pegasus calls them Sovereigns, but they're clearly Astro Supremes to go on this. So that'll be a really cool lowrider slash custom. I'm not really a lowrider guy, but I'd like to build one of these days. But a set of Supremes is about as close to lowrider as I'll get. So there's the AMT 65 Riviera by George Barris. All right, so here's the bench racing story. This T-bucket right here is my dad's T-bucket that he had when he got married to my mom. In fact, that picture is my mom and dad screaming down Grand Avenue in it. It was a fiberglass T, and if you notice, it was not channeled. It was a body on top of frame, which is you don't see very often in T's. But it had a blown, 671 blown, Hillbore injected 350 Chevy, and that was a healthy motor. And so there's some stories with that car. Dad told me that if he was just trucking down the road about 50 mile an hour, if he stabbed the throttle, he could see daylight under the front wheels. Now, my dad wasn't one to spin a yarn, so when he said stuff like that, I believed it. Another one was they were getting ready to go to the Street Rod Nationals in St. Paul, Minnesota, I think in like, I don't know, 76, 77. I'm not sure where they were going or what year. It was the late 70s. And he was over at his buddy Willie's house working on it the night before they were supposed to leave. And he reached in and he had one hand on the key and one hand on the throttle on the blower because they were that close together. And he hit the key and that thing lit off immediately. It didn't hardly wind on the starter. And that thing took off, ran over Dad, ran over Willie because they were both standing in front of the rear tire, and went in and crashed into the right front fender of Willie's 31 Chevy. And they were a mess, bleeding, ran over. My dad hung up his t-shirt in the garage for years that had this big Mickey Thompson tire track across the back of it. But they were undaunted. They kind of pulled Willie's fender out from the tire, beat it out with a hammer, and the T-bucket wasn't worse for wear because it hit the fender with like the axle, something really strong, and kind of bounced off of it and died. And they went to the Nationals the next day, but it was funny. Dad said it was funny because they were young men, but they're all walking around like old men because they had been just ran over that day. Moral of that story is always, always install and wire your neutral safety switch. Apparently that car didn't have one. Incidentally, there was another car that didn't have a neutral safety switch. It's a 32 Ford Phaeton that Boyd Coddington actually built. Really, really nice car. He built it with little John Butera. And my dad had that car. Well, I was messing around while he was out playing around like I was driving it, and as I was playing around like I was driving it, I shifted it in drive and then went back in the house and then left it in drive, and he came out and started her up and it lunged into the bench and tweaked the bumper a little bit. He was able to straighten it out, and he came in, "Did you get in my car? Did you?" I was like, "Nope." It wasn't me. I lied through my teeth. There's no way I was gonna tell him I did that. Moral of the story is neutral safety switches are good. You should use them. So there's your bench racing story, the scary T-bucket Dad had. I think he also told me one time he armor the seats in it because it had like vinyl diamond tuft in it. He came out of a parking lot one time and stood on the throttle, and he ended up in the passenger seat with the car going down the road because the seat was so slick. Anyway, bench racing stories. There it is. Thanks for coming by and seeing the bench updates and the stories. Sticking around for the stories. Take care.